This video will be a bit shorter because I already made a comparison between the RF 70 to 200mm and the RF 100 to 500mm. You can find the comparison on my channel, of course. Let's take another close look at the body of the RF 100 to 500mm. For so many focal lengths, we have a really compact telephoto lens in our hands. While you might swear about the 4.5 to 7.1 aperture, the built-in 5-axis image stabilizer of the new EOS R modules do a very good job, but more on that in a moment. The lens weighs 1,530 grams, currently costs $3,100 and is not made for DSLRs. You can still use your 77mm filters on top and the RF teleconverters. The lens hood and the case are included. On the lens hood there is a small shaft, which you can use to change the strength of an ND filter, for example. There is no longer a focus distance indicator on the RF lenses. This is realized via the digital display on your Canon screen. Simply switch from the autofocus to manual focus. While we're at it, let's take a look at the buttons on the side. Here we find the image stabilizer, a switch for the distances and two rings under the switches. The narrow focus ring, which really runs softly, and the RF ring on the bayonet. You can program this at your choice, for instance to adjust the aperture, ISO, shutter speed or also the focus field. Under the zoom ring you have an extra ring to adjust the hardness of the zoom ring. Finally, we have the tripod clamp, which can be rotated 360 degrees and removed. In my opinion, the RF 100 to 500mm suppresses the stray lights quite well, but see for yourself. Let's continue with the dark edges. Neither at 100, nor at 200, nor at 500mm we'll look into a dark tube. In other words, the vignetting is not really there. If you're still not satisfied with the result, just use the automatic correction in Adobe Lightroom. I was in the evening for you on the road with the Canon EOS R5 and the RF 100 to 500mm and blew me away the integrated image stabilizer. This photo was taken once without IS turned on and once with. The whole thing at a fifth of a second shutter speed, handheld and at 500mm. The distance to the building was over 500 meters, which is about 1800 feet. In video mode, I recorded you these clips, once at 100mm and once at 500mm. Once with IS and once without IS. It got exciting again with the Canon EOS R and the 4K crop factor. With longer distances and a lot of heat, there was also some flicker left. Moving on to sharpness. I haven't had a single RF lens that wasn't sharp on its focus point until now. So is this one. I recommend to take a look at the video description. At the bottom you will find some sample photos to convince yourself. The lens is sharp in any case, even at open aperture. Just select the spot and off you go. Now we come to the autofocus. With horses, my EOS R5 somehow couldn't recognize the eyes at all. Unfortunately, these animals are too small. Birds with tiny beady eyes are no problem. When it comes to people and photos, there were no problems. I just had to make sure to stand a little further away due to the focus distance. For sports, you're holding a good lens, at least as long as you're shooting in daylight or in a stadium floodlights, due to the variable aperture and low shutter speeds on fast-moving subjects. In video mode, with eye autofocus turned on, the 70 to 200mm tracked much better than the 100 to 500mm. Sometimes the face wasn't detected, sometimes the focus was completely gone, and other times it was just too slow, despite the fast autofocus of the Canon EOS R5. I'm not currently buying a 100 to 500mm because I work too rarely in telephoto perspectives and I'm currently saving for something else. However, if I were a wildlife photographer or working in sports or people watching, I would get a 100 to 500mm. What's a better way to cover so many focal lengths in such a compact format to get on safari with it? The stadium should be at least lit in dark, otherwise it won't work with a 7.1 aperture and a 2000 shutter speed. For weddings, you're better off with a 70 to 200mm, in my opinion, due to dark churches and a shorter focal length. But feel free to write me under this video what you use or would use the RF 100 to 500mm for. I'm curious, so as probably all the other ones who are reading along here. The RF 100 to 500mm also has a nice bokeh, but more about that in a moment. Not my first choice when it comes to portraits, but still they can be beautiful. I'm on my way to Frankfurt Airport, runway 25 left. With me the Canon RF 100 to 500mm and my Canon EOS R5, so as my Canon EOS R, to test this lens when it comes to spotting, because I think it's a great lens with all the included focal lengths to take great pictures of moving subjects like airplanes, and let's see how it performs at Frankfurt Airport. All the example files are listed at the bottom of the video description below. For spotting planes, this lens is top notch. The 70 to 200mm is of course great the closer you are to the action, but objectively speaking, the 100 to 500mm just makes more sense, at least for spotting. If you plan to film the airplanes in 4K with the Canon EOS R, you are of course even closer to the action, maybe a little bit too close. However, the crop factor can also get in the way now and then. Otherwise, I would say that the 100 to 500mm is a great lens for spotting. Fast autofocus when shooting, a good tracking with a large focus field and sharp photos. Due to a good image stabilizer, the RF 100 to 500mm is of course also suitable for filming, especially for wildlife filmmakers in daylight, sport filmmakers or nature filmmakers, a stunning lens. In combination with the integrated image stabilizers of the Canon EOS R5 and EOS R6, the whole thing is twice as much fun. Finally, let's take a look at the bokeh. The 9 aperture blades create a nice round bokeh, but see for yourself. Let's summarize. Personally, I find 3,100 bucks a bit too expensive for the variable aperture. 4.5 to 5.6 with the same format would be of course a bit better, whereas the EOS R5 and the EOS R6 can compensate up to 6 stops via the integrated image stabilizer. If you're a wildlife filmmaker or photographer, then you're holding a great lens here. Alternatively, if a fixed focal length and a fixed aperture is long enough for you, then you might want to take a look at the RF 600mm f11. By the way, there's also a video about this on my channel. Filming is also really fun with this lens, of course, because you can simply observe from further away. I'm happy with my RF 70 to 200mm, and now I'm borrowing the RF 100 to 500mm in case I ever needed it. Feel free to give me your feedback on this lens, and don't forget to check out the comparison between the RF 70 to 200mm and this lens here. All the best to Munich, to objektivvermietung.de, and you for watching. Feel free to follow me on Telegram and Instagram. You can find the links in the video description. If you want to support my channel, you're welcome to buy this lens, memory cards, or even the bodies via the links in the video description. All the best from Frankfurt. See you very soon und tschüss.